When the heart forgets its place, it writes a tale both sweet and bitter. Such is the story of Odongo, a man whose shadow bore the likeness of his late brother, and of Nyambura, the widow who dared to dream while still chained by grief. Their story began not in whispers but in stolen glances, trembling, uncertain, and impossible to ignore. Odongo returned from a distant land of cold winters and endless ambition, where his hands had built dreams and his heart had been kept busy. Years had passed since he had last seen his elder brother Omondi. The bond they once shared had been dulled by time and distance, and now Odongo stood at his brother's grave, not to embrace him but to bid him a final farewell. The townsfolk gathered, their faces etched with sorrow, but none carried the weight of loss like Nyambura, Omondi's widow. She stood apart, draped in mourning, her figure both fragile and unyielding. Odongo felt the sting of regret. His absence had left a void in the family, a void Omondi had filled until now. Omondi left behind 2 cute children, who were too innocent to even know what was going on. After the burial, the family put forward 2 proposals to Nyambura. She could continue to stay in her late husband's house together with the children, until she found a new lover, or since she was only 25 years old, she could go back home to her family to restart her life over again. But like Ruth in the Bible, she stayed, for her children, and for her new family. Nyambura was no ordinary woman, actually. She moved with the quiet grace of a river, carrying strength beneath her calm surface. Her beauty was understated, not in the flamboyant curves of her body but in the way her presence softened the hardest hearts. And her brother-in-law, Odongo, couldn't help but bemoan what jewel his brother had left behind. He'd often look at Nyambura and swear, "May the gods punish me if I ever married and left such a beautiful woman behind." Was it all just admiration though, or there was more? It began with Odongo's sense of duty, a promise to his late brother to care for his family. Omondi's house, a grand structure that loomed over the town with its spacious halls and silent rooms, became Odongo's second home. He visited often, bringing food, repairing broken furniture, and playing with the children. Nyambura's children adored him. The youngest, barely 3 years old, would tug at his trousers, calling him "Daddy" in her innocence. Her laughter, like the sound of rain on a dry land, filled the house with a fragile joy. At first, Odongo saw his growing affection for Nyambura as nothing more than admiration for her resilience. But with every visit, the lines blurred. It was in the way her voice softened when she spoke to him, in the lingering looks that neither dared to acknowledge. And so, day by day, their bond deepened, not in words but in moments, small, fleeting, and dangerous. Then came that night. It was a day like any other, yet it felt different. Odongo had decided to take Nyambura and the children out for dinner, a rare treat in the village. The children squealed with delight as they clung to his arms, their faces glowing with excitement. Nyambura, too, seemed lighter that evening, her laughter ringing like a melody he hadn't heard before. They returned home late, the moon high in the sky, casting its pale glow over Omondi's house. As Odongo prepared to leave, the youngest child began to cry, clinging to his leg with all her might. "Don't go, Daddy," she sobbed, her voice trembling with desperation. Nyambura tried to coax her, but the child's cries only grew louder. With a resigned smile, Odongo relented. "I'll stay the night," he said, settling on the couch in the spacious living room. The house, though large, felt eerily quiet as the night deepened. Odongo lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, sleep eluding him. The silence weighed heavily on his chest, his mind racing with thoughts he dared not name. Thirst eventually pulled him from his restless state. Padding softly through the dark corridors, he made his way to the kitchen. The faint sound of water being poured startled him. There, under the dim light filtering through the window, stood Nyambura. Her loose scarf barely held her hair, and her face, free of its usual guarded expression, looked vulnerable. "I didn't mean to wake you," she said, her voice a whisper. "I couldn't sleep," he replied. "Too much on my mind." She turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "This house, it feels too big sometimes. Too quiet. I can't escape the memories." Odongo nodded, stepping closer. "You're not alone in this, Nyambura," he said, his voice soft. "We are in this together." The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. Finally, Odongo spoke, his voice trembling. "Nyambura, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." She tilted her head, confusion flickering in her eyes. "What is it, Odongo?" I think I have feelings for you," he said, the words escaping like a dam finally broken. "I've tried to fight it, tried to tell myself it's wrong, but I can't. I love you, Nyambura. And I love the children as if they were my own." Her breath hitched, and for a moment, she was silent. "You can't mean that," she whispered, her voice shaking. "What would the family say? What would the town think?" "I don't care what they say," he replied, stepping closer. "This isn't about them. It's about us. I don't want to hide this anymore." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked away. "Odongo, I don't know. I'm afraid. Afraid of what this could mean for us, for the children." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "You don't have to decide now. But know this, I will stand by you, no matter what." The confession changed everything. Odongo continued to visit, his presence a balm to Nyambura and the children. Yet, beneath the surface, their love grew, a secret, fragile and forbidden. Nyambura found herself torn between her heart and her fear of society's judgment. The whispers had already begun, quiet murmurs that followed her in the market and at the well. Odongo, too, felt the weight of their secret, but his resolve remained firm. Months later, Nyambura revealed a truth that would bind them forever. She was carrying his child, a life to be born of love, yet shadowed by uncertainty. Now, they stood on the precipice of a decision that could change their lives forever. Would they face the wrath of their families and the scorn of the town? Or would they bury their love, sacrificing their happiness for the sake of peace? The dawn broke over the town, but their hearts remained heavy with unanswered questions. What would you do if you were in their place? Share your thoughts in the comments below.